What we believe as Christ followers is that our bodies, and yes, mine is flappier and floppier than it used to be a year ago, our bodies are really just shells for our soul. They are really just coverings outside of our spirits. They are really just outer containers which house the most important thing in our lives. Now, even though these are just containers, what the Bible tells us is that our job as Christ followers is to do the best we can to maintain, to protect, to honor, to care for, to exercise, to feed, to nurture, to comfort, to nurse at times these shells. And why is that? Because they protect our souls. And as our bodies go, so go our souls. As our outer shells go, so go our spirits. So important are our bodies that the Apostle Paul gave them a very high description. In our text we're about to see this morning, the Apostle Paul calls our bodies temples. Temples. Or, in the actual text today, they are temples of the Holy Spirit. Now, to describe to you what the importance of the temple is for the Jewish people, I need to go back a little bit. So bear with me because it's important for how we think about our bodies. So let's go 3,500 years before us right now. The year is 1500 BC. And a man named Moses has just led the Israelites out of the land of Egypt. And they've been wandering this wilderness place for a good 10 years. And they've been getting into squabbles and fights. And so God decides that what these people need is the law, the 10 Commandments. And you know the 10 Commandments, and written on them is one that we talked about through the news this last week, thou shalt not murder. That's where that comes from. So the 10 Commandments, you know the story. Moses gets them when he goes up a mountain, takes him a couple of times to get them as he comes down. He brings these 10 Commandments down. And from that moment on, the commandments are the most important thing in the Jewish tradition. They are the law. They are the center. But around those 10 commandments, for the first 30 years, is a tent or a tabernacle. And it is a covering for the 10 commandments. It is the most holy thing for the Jewish people. Then when the Jewish people enter the Holy Land in about the early centuries or so, I'm trying to remember the exact date, but of course this would be about 1500 BC, they then continue to care for these 10 commandments. They care for them in a tent covering. And then they build a kind of tabernacle, like a more permanent tent. Now, again, bear with me because I want to talk about how this relates to our body. King Solomon in the year 957 BC builds the first temple of the Jewish people. It's a beautiful, huge building, the Bible tells us. God tells Solomon exactly how to build it. And the rest of the Jewish history is about the building and rebuilding and the destruction of that temple. 515 BC, 444 BC, 332 BC, 632 BC, and then finally destroyed in 70 AD. But it is a covering for the important thing, which is the 10 Commandments. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to visit the Holy Land, but if you do, please visit the Western Wall. It is the only part of the temple which still remains. But when I went and visited the temple, the Western Wall, several years ago, I was able to see the care that the Jewish people still have. That is still the holiest site in all of Judaic history, that one wall. And they care for every stone, every crack, every crevice. It is the Holy of Holies. But again, the temple was to house the 10 Commandments. Now, in today's text, as I said, Paul is about to tell us that our bodies are the temple. They are as holy as the temple was. They are an outer covering. For what? They are a covering for our souls. And that is why we need to care for our bodies as temples of God. So let me take a look at our text this morning. If you don't have a Bible, we would love to give you one, or the text is right there on the screen in front of you. I'm reading for the New International Version. Listen for the word of the Lord. It comes to us from 1 Corinthians 6, 19 through 20. Begins this way. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit? Now again, Paul here is saying that our bodies are as holy as the temple. But it isn't the temple for the Ten Commandments. It is the temple for the Spirit. On Easter, you may remember a couple weeks ago, I talked about how all of us need to have the cross of Christ inside. What we're hearing from Paul here is that in addition to the cross, we also need the Spirit inside, and that the temples, our bodies, cover that Spirit. Paul asks, do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit? And the Spirit, says Paul, is in you. It is within you when you received it from God. And that's what we believe as Christ followers. That is the Ten Commandments of our lives, is the Spirit within us. It's a living law, if you will. And then Paul says this about our bodies. You are not your own. In other words, your body does not belong to you, and it doesn't belong to anybody else. My body does not belong to me. Our bodies do not belong to us. They belong to God, just as the temple of God belonged to God.